Hi, I'm Jim Brett, President and CEO of the New England Council. Thanks for tuning in to our first episode of Inside the Corner Office for 2025. We're excited to be kicking off our third year of this podcast, where we catch up with the leaders of some of our region's most well-respected businesses to learn more about their career paths and about the incredible institutions they lead. This month, I had the pleasure of talking with Mark Peters, who became the president and CEO of the MITRE Corporation in September of 2024. The MITRE Corporation is a not-for-profit global technology company that operates research and development centers around the world and has one of two headquarters here in New England, in fact, in Bedford, Massachusetts. Mark shared more about his impressive background in nuclear energy and national security and highlighted how MITRE partners with the federal government to provide groundbreaking research on issues ranging from cybersecurity to artificial intelligence and to blue technology. As always, I thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoy the conversation. Mark, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today. I'm very glad that our members and others tuning in will have the opportunity to learn more about what an incredible organization MITRE is. But we always start these conversations first learning a little more about our guests and their background. So let's start there. You are a nuclear and geophysical science expert, to say the least. Tell us a little more about your professional background and, more importantly, how it brought you to MITRE.
Yeah, Jim. Well, first of all, thanks to you and to the New England Council for having me today. I'm looking forward to the conversation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I'm a geologist and a geophysical scientist by training, and entered early on in my career, went into the Department of Energy National Laboratory System. So federally funded research and development center on the Department of Energy side, namely early in my career at Los Alamos National Laboratory of great Oppenheimer fame. Started my career there, and I spent my entire career started out working on nuclear waste disposal. That's how a person with a geology background gets into things nuclear. So really grew my career in the Department of Energy National Labs, including being the director at Idaho National Laboratory from 2015 to 2020, and worked at Battelle as well, where we managed 9 national laboratories for the U.S. government. So with that extensive national lab, federally funded research and development center experience, that's what brought me to MITRE. So I've been at MITRE since early September. So I'm about 90 days in, fairly new at it. But I grew up through the federally funded research and development centers. I'm going to use FFRDC to be short, which again brought me here today.
You know, within the business community here in New England, there's a lot of talk about how do we get young professionals interested, engaged in STEM careers. So I'm wondering if you can share what inspired you to pursue a career in science.
Yeah, my dad was a chemical engineer. He ended up with a Ph.D. in chemical engineering. So I was raised in a household that had, and my mom was a nurse, and so I was raised in a household where STEM mattered. But I fell in love with rocks. I'm told since I was really a small child. But the thing that got me excited about going into geology as an undergrad was Mount St. Helens. So I started my undergrad in 1982. And for those of us who are of our age range, we remember Mount St. Helens in 1980. So it erupted, and I was just fascinated by it. I was like, oh, I've got to figure out how volcanoes work. And so I actually went into geology with a tremendous interest in volcanoes. And my interest broadened from there, but that's what got me started was Mount St. Helens.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, MITRE operates a number of the federally funded research and development centers.
Right.
You just mentioned it, FFRDCs. Can you explain what exactly they are and how it is different from a commercial government contractor?
Yeah, so the FFRDCs, there's over 40 of those across the government. And given the popularity of Oppenheimer, I like to sort of use that as a way of starting, because Los Alamos National Laboratory grew out of the Manhattan Project, as did the FFRDCs as a system. And so they've grown over time. They serve in the public interest. They are close to government. They provide science, technology, and innovation and advice directly to government. They're in a non-competitive sense, and so they support the government. They don't compete with the private sector. We partner with the private sector, but we don't compete with the private sector. And it's a very unique set of capabilities. They tend to be operated through contracts, typically, not exclusively, but typically with nonprofits. So MITRE, we're a nonprofit that serves in the public interest. And so our stakeholders, our shareholders are the citizens of the United States and the government. We work for the government in the public interest. And again, there's over 40 of these spread across all of government. Our FFRDCs, we have 6 sponsors. One is DoD, the Department of Defense, and the intelligence community. One is the Federal Aviation Administration. Another is the Department of Commerce. Another is the Department of Health and Human Services, and Department of Homeland Security, and then the Department of Treasury. So we have 6 that we operate for them. So we are all cross-government. It's a tremendous differentiator and important thing for MITRE.
Yeah. Historically, how have these research and development centers benefited the nation?
Well, it started with, of course, the design of nuclear weapons during the Manhattan Project that led to the end of World War II. That's the beginning. But since then, everything from the internet to, in our case, commercialization of radar for the Air Force and the commercial sector, to the human genome, to batteries. So you can really trace supercomputing, now quantum computing and AI. So there's a lot of innovation in the private sector, but a lot of this government-funded basic research that's done through the FFRDCs has been transformational across the entire U.S. economy.
Wow. What would you say are current or future science and technology challenges that a FFRDC can help navigate in service to our nation? And if not, what about the challenges? What are some of the most important innovations we'll encounter in the near future?
Well, I mean, we're living through a disruption that is AI, artificial intelligence, and so the FFRDCs are very important partners in the ecosystem that's developing AI and implementing AI. In our case, across the government, we have a great partnership with NVIDIA and the U.S. government to work together to operate a machine using NVIDIA technology that's going to look at federal challenges and apply AI to solving big national challenges. So we're living that disruption right now, as you know. We're also working on all things quantum. So quantum communication, quantum sensing, quantum computing, and that's down the road going to be very, very disruptive. So in those cases, we're actually in a race, right? I mean, we're looking to maintain U.S. competitiveness in a race with countries like China, for example. And the other part about these technologies is they're, of course, I'll say dual use, in the sense that they can be used for good, but they can also be used for bad. And so there's a national security overlay, and that's another area where the FFRDCs like MITRE, that MITRE operates, play a big role.
You know, we know that MITRE is a leader in convening the public-private partnerships. What are the key areas requiring that strategic investment and strategic cooperation by the PPPs? Yeah,
first thing I'll say is that public-private partnerships are, just to reemphasize your point, Jim, are really, really important for the federal government to engage with the private sector so that we can move, accelerate, and win the race. And so us as strong collaborators with government have to find key private sector partners across all the areas that we work. So we're working, for example, in health. We're working extensively with a consortium to improve the quality of healthcare in the United States, as well as access to individuals to their healthcare data. We're working a lot on critical infrastructure. So think grid, water, hospitals, transportation. what we call critical infrastructure and the protection of that from things like cyber attack. So there's extensive cooperation through our own developments. We have a software suite called Attack that does a really good job of understanding the sensitivities to infrastructures to cyber threat. But working again across the private, all aspects of the private sector there. We've got strong partnerships with the private sector in the Department of Defense space, because of course a lot of the important innovation and implementation and built out of the defense industrial base is through the private sector, through the for-profit private sector. So we have a lot of partnerships there. Really, all of our FFRDCs have a strategic set of partners in the private sector, and that's the way that government can broaden their reach as well.
I understand that MITRE's origin began right here in the
Right.
Boston area. Can you share a little more about MITRE's
Right.
history and how it's grown to this incredible organization it is today?
Yeah, so we were founded in 1958 as a organization that spun out actually of MIT and MIT Lincoln Lab, along with the U.S. Air Force, and it was to develop the semi-automatic ground environment. We call it STAGE. So it's basically the radar, the way the radar system and associated infrastructure that was used to protect the airspace. Again, it started with U.S. Air Force, but there was a partnership with the FAA, or the predecessor to the FAA at the time. And so we grew as that. So we established our campus in Bedford, right outside of Boston. And we still have a very vibrant campus there in Bedford. Nearly 2,500 of our staff actually work there. And we have a lot of laboratory and prototyping capability there. But it grew out of that. And so we started there, and then we grew in our Department of Defense space. And ultimately, our next FFRDC came through the FAA. So we started with a big focus on aviation, but we're a systems engineering organization. We're very deep in systems engineering. A lot of the problems that I talked about, whether that be critical infrastructure or protecting the nation's airspace or protecting our national security through our defense industrial base, those are all systems questions. And so we have a deep cadre of systems engineers that work on those problems. But Bedford is a special place.
Yeah, right.
It's a really special campus. It's beautiful, and we have a tremendous capability there. I was just there last week. I'm going to try to spend as much time as I can there. Yeah.
What is your vision for MITRE in the next 5-10 years?
I would say that the challenges that we've talked about with protecting the nation's national security, the critical infrastructure, how we think about a very complex world, right? We've got wars in Ukraine, we've got a war in the Middle East, you've got China's potential intentions with Taiwan. This is a very, very complex world right now, and we're really at the front lines of all of those challenges, whether it be from an economic perspective or a defense perspective or protection perspective. So I'm really excited about doubling down on our FFRDCs that we currently run, improving our engagement with the private sector, and really starting to help the government look around corners. Again, it's a complex world, not only solving the problems of today, but thinking about developing tools and approaches for how we can think about, okay, the world's dangerous today. What does it look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And how do we build the S&T capability that the nation needs to address those challenges? So I'm very excited about it. We're an innovation company at our heart, and we will continue to do that.
Can you share some of the ways in which MITRE is embedded in the innovation ecosystem here in the Northeast, and why you have prioritized being co-headquarters here in Bedford?
Yeah, so we have great partnerships. First of all, I want to thank you and the New England Council again. We've had a long-standing partnership with you, and certainly appreciate everything that you all have done and continue to do. And we're very intimate in the ecosystem in New England and in the greater Boston area. It starts with the universities. Great partnerships from the perspective of research collaborations, but also they're a very, very important pipeline for our staff. So that would be all the universities in the area. And of course, MIT, Harvard, Northeastern, the UMass system, WPI, and then North Rhode Island, New Hampshire. So we really pull from across New England. And those are really important. Then we've, of course, got key federal sponsors, Hascom Air Force Base, the Armored Futures folks, Coast Guard, and Navy presence as well in the area that we interface and integrate with. And then working with things like mass challenge, mass robotics, the innovation pieces of it, the bridging, the folks who bridge. And then importantly, the partnerships with state government, local government, as well as the federal government, and also the congressional delegation. And we actually work closely with you all as well in sort of facilitating that. And I've got some really talented folks on my side who are heavily engaged with the New England Council and working. So we really see ourselves as an important part of the ecosystem, and we're there because of that ecosystem. I think we were a part of creating it, but also we benefit from it tremendously. And I would extend that to, I'm talking to you today from the DC area, from Northern Virginia, and what you all do in DC with the congressional delegation and otherwise. And us being here, I think, provides that important connection. So,
well, thank you. MITRE's breadth and depth of R&D expertise is significantly larger than I think many in our region may realize. So, what are some of the areas of expertise at MITRE that people may not be aware of?
Well, I've talked about systems engineering more broadly, extensive expertise in cybersecurity. So that's protection of IT systems as well as what we call OT, operational technologies. So think little control systems that control the grid, control your car. So we have a lot of expertise in protecting both IT and OT. And that would be across all sectors, whether that be health data or national security data. A lot in microelectronics, RF, antenna development, tremendous amount in software development, software engineering, AI. I mentioned quantum, all things quantum. So we've got a really wide range of scientists and engineers working across all those areas, and so part of our investment, we're again nonprofit. But so what money we make from the contracts is invested back into MITRE to maintain and enhance those capabilities and also support the infrastructure that's required in Bedford and McLean.
We're speaking at a very interesting time in terms of federal policy.
Right.
With the new administration taking office and new leadership in Congress. So what are some of your top R&D priorities at the federal level you'd like to see accomplished in the next, year or two?
Yeah, I'd like to see continued recognition on the importance of federal R&D investment. And I expect, I don't think this is an area that we're going to get a lot of discussion about, but it's going to be a question about the scale and where federal investment ends and private sector investment picks up. And also importantly, I think thinking more deeply about how the private sector can engage with federal R&D, the federal R&D enterprise to win the race. This is, as I've mentioned, this is a really complex place. And so, but you don't do it without continued federal R&D investment, but also thinking more creatively about how we can be more effective and efficient in engaging the private sector and moving faster. And what you're hearing from the new administration, the incoming administration and the new Congress is an emphasis on that, right? How do we find efficiencies? And I think we can all agree that, government, we can always find efficiencies in the federal government. I think we can agree on that. So it's a question of where we find them to make us better. So we're excited about we've been through many transitions, right? And we always pivot and do what's right for the nation, and that is to support the incoming administration and the new Congress, and we'll do that. But I think there's a lot of opportunities to accelerate a lot of the things we've been doing as we approach January and beyond.
That was my next question. How can members of the New England Council best engage with those shaping policy around prioritizing long-term R&D that ensures the U.S. leadership is in critical technologies and our economic security?
Yeah, I think understanding, which I think the council does do, is understanding where those critical emerging technologies are, where we're in a race, and coming in with thoughtful ideas about how we can accelerate development of those, understanding and developing those technologies in the context of what is a very complex globe. But I think understanding the platforms that the new administration's coming in, what the new Congress, how the new Congress is aligned on those, and I think there's going to be a lot of alignment. Many of these issues are actually, quite frankly, bipartisan, bicameral.
Bipartisan.
Yeah, and I know you all think about that a lot, but
right.
That I should have said that at the very beginning. We're obviously apolitical, and these problems are not going away.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a recognition by everybody in Washington of that. So I think, continuing to make that point about the importance of investment in R&D, and being creative, but also being open to new ideas. I think the new administration is going to come in with some ideas about how to be more efficient and effective, and I think we should be open to those. And I know we will be.
Well, I want to thank you for taking time to join me today to share more about this incredible organization that you lead. Our nation, needless to say, is very fortunate to have such an institution like MITRE to provide such expertise around some of these very critical issues that you enunciated. We truly are very proud, the New England Council, to have MITRE, longtime member, as an active participant of the council's agenda. So we're very, very fortunate to have you and your team at MITRE. For those of you who are tuning in, I hope you enjoyed this chance to learn more about MITRE and about the wide array of critical challenges they're working to develop solutions to. So please be sure to tune in next month when our guest will be the retired Brigadier General Jack Hammond, who is now the executive director of the home-based program serving veterans and their families. And we hope that you have a great day. Thank you.